Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR Podcast, Talladega Fall Race 2024. Sheets are live. Get your hands on the sheets. Go to racefortheprize.com. You can simply PayPal, Cash App, Venmo the money over to me. Links in the description below. And then I'll send you access. It's Talladega. It's the Gen-7 car. You're looking at the Gen-7 data. We have had some changes. There's always changes at the Super-Speedway plate tracks. And they're running about 70%. They're saving fuel. It's changed the dynamic of the race. Has it really changed the racing that much? Too long, didn't read, not listen to the whole podcast. It's plate racing, stack in the back. There it is. I have to say stack in the back every 2 minutes. I'm contractually obligated and must mention it in the first 45 seconds of the show. So if I see you later, stack in the back. And yes, I think you can really stack in the back when they're all running at 70% saving fuel. Now, does fuel saving and 70% speed change anything? Does it make it better? Does it make it worse? Or is it still just super speedway racing? It's still just super speedway racing. Maybe there are fewer wrecks when guys aren't pushing it as much, but you could also argue that if they're not pushing it as much, they're staying closer together, and that in theory should cause more wrecks. And at the end of the day, at super speedways, it's not necessarily about volume. It's about the size of the wreck. And if everybody's running 70% and they're all running together, then when one wrecks, then they all wreck together. So in theory, whether there's more or less wrecks, the wreck, the big one, should be a big one. But in the end, you're probably saying to yourself, I don't want to roster JJ or BJ or Cody or Anthony Alfredo, although the results have been pretty good, especially Anthony Alfredo. You got to like what Beard Motorsports does at the super speedways. They got the RCR power, and Alfredo's been pretty solid at Talladega. Even if you go back to 2021, he has a finish of 11th and 12th. Definitely can believe in him. You can believe in any of these guys. They can all get it done. Cody Ware finished 4th at Daytona this year. Cody Ware finished 4th. Not Ware cars aren't slugs, but Cody Ware, not really like the greatest driver ever. And we have seen BJ McLeod running up front at Talladega recently before he hits the wall. And we know JJ Yaley is a seasoned racer. And but dude, we don't believe in NY racing. I don't know. He ran all the laps at Atlanta, I believe. I think he was on the lead lap. So I think the car's going to have enough speed. If they're running at 70%, I don't really want to go there. But you know he's going to qualify with the least amount of speed, so he's going to be in the very back. And if this thing turns into chaos and he finishes 18th from 40th, and it can get it done. 20 place differential points, 22 place differential points. Just as long as he doesn't wreck, I think he's in play. Now you're going to argue, well, at the end of the race, I knew the guys that have speed. I don't think it really matters. I mean, you listen to anything that Denny Hamlin says. The guys that pull out are punished. You try to get out of line and make a move, even if they are running at 70%, you lose the draft because everybody is fuel saving. Like, all right, you're going to go make a move. Cool, we're going to save fuel. And then you're going to fall to the back. So if the majority want to save fuel, which that's kind of the philosophy, and make the gains on pit road, then you have to follow the herd for most of the race. So, yeah, you can try a roster guy that has an elite car. I don't know how much that's really going to matter in this modern version in the Gen-7 car. So here's your reminder. Stack in the back. What is their other go-to catchphrase? Build the winning lineup, not the optimal lineup. Build the winning lineup, not the optimal lineup. There is almost always a pivot from a driver that starts inside the top 10. There will be a driver that starts inside the top 10 that does finish in the optimal lineup. And sometimes there are two drivers from the top 10 that end up in the optimal lineup. And if you don't have them, then you weren't optimal. But that doesn't mean you didn't win the GPP. In most cases, you can pivot down a point or two, and there's a driver right there that scored a top 10 score, isn't quite optimal, isn't top 6, but scores 2 fewer points that started in the back. That has a higher probability from the outset of finishing in a very successful winning lineup. Not always the case, and we can look back. Let's take a glance. at some of the previous Talladega races. So if you look at the spring, it was all in the back. Draw your line at 18th and back. I mean, even the top 9 drivers were all starting in the back. There it is. You didn't need to target a driver up front. You didn't need to take that risk. You didn't need to take I need that one guy up front to be optimal. You can do it, and I'll still man that argument in a second. And the fall race last year will kind of give you a little bit of that, because we do have 2 drivers starting up front. You got Ryan Blaney starting 10th. You got Kevin Harvick starting 11th. Talladega last spring. We can't stack in the back. All right, well, first of all, you could pivot one down to Daniel Suarez, who scored 50 points. Still pretty solid. Now, it is kind of tricky here because we did get several guys starting up front. But then even Ryan Preece ends up with a top 10 score of 49 points, starting 19th. A little bit further down, Ricky Stenhouse starting 35th. So if you are really wanting to build optimal, then there is an argument that could be the case. Let's look back at some other previous lineups. So we've got, Ryan Blaney starting 5th. You could have easily pivoted to Chase Elliott starting 29th. $200 cheaper, price still fits. You got plenty of money left. So again, you could try to build optimal and get cute. And it may not necessarily be getting cute. We'll still make the argument for rostering a guy up front. But we'll also attack it. But if you just stack in the back, I missed Blaney. I'm pretty sure that if you had Chase Elliott instead of Blaney, you probably won the GPP. And then we look further into the top 10. We do have another driver in Buescher starting up front, but we also have Suarez starting 22 and Stenhouse starting 33. Fall 2022. 29, 19th starting position for Blaney, 34th, 16th, 33rd. We got a guy starting up front. Well, you could have pivoted slight to Austin Cindric, who scored the 8th most fantasy points starting 17th, or even taken Bubba Wallace, who scored 43. So, yeah, you lost 9 points, but I still think if you took Bubba Wallace here, 27, 20, 21. Now, the reason why you stack in the back versus taking a guy up front, although we always see a guy starting up front sneak in here, not always, but we've seen several lineups so far. The reason why is because it's just easier. You want to make your life easy. How so? Well, first let's steel man taking a guy up front. Let's make a defense of taking this position. Why would you take a guy up front? Well, if you like a driver starting up front because of their past success at super speedways, like a Ryan Blaney, a Denny Hamlin, or Ross Chastain, and they're starting too close to the front, they can't get you a lot of place differential points. Well, the deciding factor is just simply going to be, when you're thinking about rostering that driver, if you really want to go optimal and not do the stack in the back, not go all in stack in the back, you simply just need to ask yourself, can they score 53 fantasy points? What needs to happen for this driver to score 53 fantasy points? Is there just enough place differential and a reasonable finish that they can get to 53? In this case for Chastain, he needed to lead laps to get there because he was starting 6th. Place differential, that's not going to be enough. Finishing, he got the top 5, but he needed to lead laps. It's much easier to roster a guy starting 12th, like Eric Jones, a little bit more place differential, but he too needed to lead some laps. So really, if you are considering rostering that driver up front, trying to go opto, trying to be a little different, separate from the guys stacking in the back, it is fine, but just usually a 53-point cut line. So calculate their finishing position, maybe a handful of place differential. If finishing position, points, and place differential get you to 53, then I think that guy's on board. If they need to lead laps, boy, that is a tricky call. And I don't know if I would really go. I know personally I would not do that. But I think that is the problem with trying to be a little different and not stacking in the back. And it comes down to just basically an equation here. What are you asking from the driver? How many questions are you asking from your pick? How many demands are you making? And when you stack in the back, you're pretty much simply just asking this driver survives the chaos. It's really just one ask: don't wreck. So when you're making that pick, you're only requiring that pick to do one thing and one thing only, and that is just survive. You only need one thing to happen. That's, a coin toss to begin with, but that's your only demand. Now, when you play a driver starting up front, you're adding a two-step equation. You're also asking, I need that driver to survive. So, Gilly, just survive. But when it came to Ross Chastain in this fall 2022 race, you needed two things to happen. So you're making a bet on two things happening rather than one. I'd rather make one bet than to have bet A go through and then bet B. Bet A is Ross, you got to survive. And then bet B, I also need you to lead laps. It's complicated. You're lowering your probabilities. I wouldn't encourage it. Yes, the optimal lineup usually features a driver starting up front. And if you're building lineups, sure, go for it. If you're building a ton of lineups. But I would rather keep the process simple, stack in the back. Winning lineup, you don't need to build the optimal lineup. Now, if this was a Daytona 500, and if this were the Daytona 500, and you're competing against a lot of people with $1 million GPP, then yeah, you might have to be a little bit more contrarian and roster one or two drivers starting close to the front to separate and really try to hone in on the optimal line. But that's not the case. It's a 25K GPP. The whales are not swimming in this sea. The whales are playing NFL DFS. They're spending all their time on NFL DFS. Sure, there will be some, but not that many. And so you don't have to be that weird or that contrarian or that unique. And so if there is a race where at a Super-Speedway where you can go more stack in the back, I would argue it's the fall Talladega race. You can make a good argument that's the Daytona summer race given the volatility of that event. But this, in terms of DFS, is probably the one to go after. There are fewer whales, fewer monster players using aggregate projections and entering 150 lineups. There will be some, but not nearly as many. This is the annual YOLO race. This is the annual YOLO MME event of the year, where guys that normally don't do that, like you and me, really can increase the amount of rosters or lineups that we put in because there are fewer whales. Super Speedway. You don't have to, of course. As always, I'm not going to put it on the screen. This is a great weekend to make long shot bets. I think Harrison Burton, who just won at a Super Speedway, is 50-1. So always explore those options. Throwing a couple bucks on a deep threat. You never know. Justin Haley won years ago. We've seen Ricky Stenhouse win at 50-1. We saw Michael McDowell in 2021 win at 100-1. It's always worth a good long shot bet. I'll sort them based on their Gen-7 data now, so you can see that on the screen. And we'll go median. You want to go median or average? I don't care. I'm going to go median, and here it is. And as you look at the data, you're going to see about what you always see. It's that it's 50-50 even among the best. And even the worst are around 30% having solid days. So when we get in these arguments over who should I roster, who's better at super speedways, like the difference is not that much. It really isn't. I think we put way too much sometimes into drivers who have had solid finishes. I don't really believe that you have to go that route, and you can take drivers that haven't necessarily experienced a lot of success that are in the back, not have to go big names in the back. I think any name in the back is going to be fine. As I said before, I think BJ is on the table. I think JJ is on the table. Slow pasta. Beard Motorsports is on the table. Cody, where are you now? Back. No more suspension. Celebrating his return with a fourth place finish at Daytona. So there's your data. If you're listening, Byron, Bush, Blaney, Elliott, Briscoe, Smith, Wallace, Bowman, Hemrick are your top 10 so far in the Gen-7 package. Nemechek was pretty solid in the old package as well. I think that'll do it. Not much else to say. RaceForThePrize.com, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App if you want to get access to the fancy NASCAR spreadsheet. Appreciate you guys once again for another season. We've been doing this for a decade, hanging in there. You know, I do apologize for doing fewer pods down the stretch, but in all honesty and full transparency, as always, kind of busy with the full-time job in the fall, building a new curriculum from the bottom up. So, you know, and then family. So it is very difficult to continue to pump out podcasts at a prolific rate. Also, there is less demand. I mean, that's clear. You look at the shrinking prize pools, and this always happens as NFL heats up. So it's just clear. Like, you don't want to listen to very many fantasy NASCAR podcasts. I appreciate the guys that are still hanging in there and still want to listen to these, but I get it. There's like 7 million NFL shows, NBA shows, MLB shows. There's regular TV shows, regular podcasts, a lot going on in the world. So there's simply just not a lot of demand for fantasy NASCAR content. So I'm not going to crush 10 podcasts a week where it gets like 15 views. No point in that. And you can see that across the NASCAR content industry, and that all the numbers are down for everybody. And they always are. No big deal. You just don't make as much content. Less demand. I'll try to do my best moving forward to get you some early week podcasts over the next couple weeks. No promises. And also trying to get you some weekend podcasts. I'll do my best. Still here, always here. And I'm glad that you're here and always here. It's been great. Another good season for you guys. Thanks for supporting me. It goes a long way. I am very much appreciative. And I'll try to do my best with the free content as much as I possibly can. But you should also try to check out the Fantasy NASCAR Spreadsheet. It really helps. It really does. I really, truly appreciate your patronage, your support, your comments. It's great having you guys around. Good group of people. Also, I'll add this, a little DFS commentary. One of the reasons for a slowdown on my part, and I think there will be a slowdown across the industry, is the rapidly developing AI. I mean, whether you use Gemini, Notebook LM, ChatGPT, or any of the various other softwares powered by NVIDIA, wish you would have bought that stock. You bought $10,000 of NVIDIA back when they were solely or mainly just for video games, right, 2 years ago. Now you'd have about, what, 200K? Boy, that would be nice. But as the community learns, not really necessarily the industry, but the players, you listening right now, as you start to learn and be more adept and understanding and how to use these AI programs, the future of DFS videos, boy, I think it is very uncertain and does not look good. It's not necessarily negative. There's going to have to be changes that happen, but, you know, someone creates a 90-minute content video on picks, and I can get that information through AI and then filter through it and read it in text in about 5 minutes. So there really is no reason to watch or listen to some of these DFS podcasts or any of these DFS podcasts anymore. And so that means the video content's going to have to make some sort of change. I mean, just from the sponsor standpoint of, you know, all those ad reads and all those things that happen, once people shift from actually watching the videos to having the AI brief them, they're not going to get that sponsor information. The sponsor is going to realize we're sponsoring a video and basically all that's being cut out. No one's paying attention to that. And as they pull out, then, you know, shows will suffer. We'll see. Who knows? A lot is going to change. But if you're not already using Gemini or Notebook LM or ChatGPT with YouTube videos, then you really ought to jump into that and start figuring that out. because it'll save you a lot of time, make it a lot more efficient for you, free you up to do other things, free you up to do your own research in DFS or just do anything else in life. Now, I get that some of these DFS shows are a bit of a hangout, and that will always exist, but man, I don't know if the industry can hang on as a hangout. People want picks. You want picks? Put the video in Chat GPT. It'll give you the picks real quick. It'll give you the information. It'll tell you Josh Engelman likes this basketball player because of his last 5 games or the matchup or the way that they're playing. It'll just tell you real quick, and you can fly right through it. And you don't have to watch a 2-hour video. That's where it's going. I mean, it's already here. It's been here if you've been using it. But more people are going to figure this out. They're going to learn how to use AI from the user perspective and the content perspective. Boy, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. NASCAR lawsuit, you've been following this. The big 2 takeaways are, and I think nothing is going to happen, but the big complaint or gripe is that NASCAR gets to freely use the intellectual property of the teams and the drivers and doesn't have to pay them at all for it. Can feature them in any ad or any venue they want and not pay any copyright for intellectual property. Seems like a pretty raw deal. And then also, part of the contract is that teams can't compete in any other leagues or any other tracks. Now, most tracks, from grassroots to ARCA, are affiliated with NASCAR, so the teams can compete in those. But if they wanted to try a different racing series, build their own racing series, try to compete with NASCAR, open up different tracks, I would love to see that. All right, that'll do it. You know who to play. Stack in the back, build the winning lineup. If you are considering rostering a driver close to the front, then you really need them to get to 53 fantasy points. Best case scenario, they can get to 53 without having to lead. It's a tall order, tall task, big ask for a driver to get to 53 and lead laps. It's not a place I will go. Maybe you could consider it in the Daytona 500 with a giant, massive player pool or driver or DFS user pool. But in a smaller 25K Talladega fall race 2024, don't believe it's necessary. I think all these guys are going to be in play with a 70% fuel saving strategy. Just pick 6 and survive. Man alive.